Let's bring in former Dallas Fed President Richard Fisher. Richard, great to have you with us on a day like today. What do you make of all of this? This seems like a big step on the part of the judiciary in terms of checks of the power of the administration, and also a victory for the Fed.
I think it's a victory for the Fed, but I think what has been missing in this discussion, Powell has been elected chairman of the FOMC for the year. There is a scenario, if he decides to stay on, the FOMC, Federal Open Market Committee, even with a new chairman in the seat, can still have him chairing the FOMC for the rest of the year. No one has talked about that. As far as Senator Tillis is concerned, it seems to me he's hell-bent on making sure that until they dismiss all this business, he's not going to accede, even though he thinks highly of Kevin Warsh. The other thing I think that we don't discuss, and we should remember history, Harry Truman put McChesney Martin in the chair thinking that he would do what he wanted. He did not. Kevin's got to think of his long-term history. He's only 55. If he becomes chair and chairman of the FOMC at the same time, he's got to think about what his legacy is going to be 20 years from now. And he doesn't want to appear to be like McChesney Martin, who finally gave in to Lyndon Johnson. As he said in his own memoirs, he went to his deathbed ashamed of himself. McChesney Martin was head of the New York Stock Exchange at the age of 31. He was a boy genius, as some people claim that Kevin Warsh is. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of history here. And I think Kevin Warsh is a smart guy. I served with him for 4 years. We had differences of opinion. I dissented. He did not. But he's a smart guy. He's got to think about what it's going to look like 10 years from now, 15 years from now. He could be the longest serving Fed chairman in history if he holds his course.
Well, and to that point,
I
Richard,
don't think this is clear. And with regard to Ms. Pirro, she's a tough lady. There's no question about it. I think clearly she's just doing whatever she thinks she can do. The ruling indicates just to get rid of Jay Powell. Since his Sunday broadcast, he's been in the driver's seat. And he is extremely well liked on both sides of the Hill. And it's not just Tillis. I think there are other Republican senators that would support him fully. And clearly there are a lot of Democratic senators that would do the same.
Yeah, so, obviously, as you're alluding to, Richard, in Chair Powell's sort of video response to this investigation, he did call it a pretext. I mean, and that's the language that the judge just used in trying to put down these subpoenas. Just to get to your idea of, Warsh will have to think about his legacy ultimately and sort of the long-term value of his reputation. That's about, taking the current evidence in mind and trying to decide whether it's appropriate to lower rates. Now, with what's happened with oil, with what's happened to inflation expectations, I know you were focused on that back in, 08-ish. As was Warsh, actually, I think is relevant here because he was also saying hawkish things while the Fed was on hold in 08.
Yeah, I agreed with Kevin, or Kevin agreed with me, that expanding the balance sheet drew in enormous risks. And the question really was, how do we get out of it once we start that process? By creating zero interest rates, expanding the balance sheet, making clear we're going to play that game for a long time and add to it. We were telling the market to discount the present value of future cash flows mathematically to infinity. There are some people that would argue that today there still is that overhang, and that's what we're seeing in the private credit markets. But Kevin and I were on the same wavelength on that argument. I think the difference is that I dissented, and he, working closely with Ben Bernanke, was very helpful to him, did not. But again, coming back to this effort to scare Chairman Powell away, I don't think it's effective. He's a man of great integrity. He has to worry how he goes down in history. And he is going to stick to his guns. And that Sunday night broadcast, unprecedented as it was, gave him enormous leverage on going forward on this case. We'll just have to see how it's resolved. And again, she is a tough prosecutor, but I have a feeling that she's going to lose these appeals.